Hey guys, I'm Becky from Bookmarks Reviews, and today I'm talking about all the books that I read in November. As always, I will be making this video short and sweet, and we'll be starting with the lowest rating, which this month was a DNF, and moving our way to the 5 stars. So the first book that was DNF'd this month was Ghost Hunters by Robert David Chase. This is a book that is supposed to be a bunch of stories about different cases that Ed and Lorraine Warren have taken part in. I was expecting this to be a book that was kind of spooky, very interesting, kind of like biographical. I wasn't able to finish this book, and it's for one because it was a bit boring. I was definitely expecting it to talk more about like their scarier cases. Now, there are a whole bunch of books like this book that touch on different cases of theirs, and there is one that's called like Demonology, which is about more of their demonic possession cases, which probably should have been the book that I picked up. But I was still expecting this book to be scary. From what I read of it, it wasn't. And then the last case that I read really rubbed me the wrong way. It takes kind of this male gaze kind of viewpoint throughout the book, and it makes some mentions about things I just really didn't like. So I DNF'd this book and don't regret it. I definitely want to try out maybe some of the other ones that are written by different authors. I'm really interested in learning more about Ed and Lorraine Warren, but this definitely wasn't the book to do that. The next book that I DNF'd is not a hard DNF. I may revisit this book at a later point, but I honestly don't really know because it just doesn't seem like something that I really want to read or am interested in, and that is The Cerulean by Amy Ewing. I was very surprised about DNFing this, but I expected this book to be a lot darker, like her Jewel series. It was something totally different and not at all what I was expecting. It wasn't a bad book, it just was not what my expectations were. And the fact that it also wasn't like really dark and compelling like her Jewel series was very disappointing. Moving on to the 2 stars, I only had one, and that was Boys Over Flowers by Yoko Kamio. Now, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I know that this has been turned into a K-drama and is one that I thought I would probably like. I'm pretty sure that I was recommended this K-drama, so I decided to pick up the manga before getting into the show just to kind of see like what it's about. I'm hoping that the show is different and I still have plans to check it out, but this book was not good, you guys. If you're into like enemies to lovers, except instead of being like regular enemies to lovers that we normally see, it's more of like bullying, and at one point there is an attempted rape. If you're into that, then you'll like this book, but the whole time I just kind of felt icky, so I didn't like this book. I don't plan on reading the other volumes, but I'll still check out the K-drama just to see if it's the same. I'm hoping it's not. Let me know in the comments. Moving on to our 3 stars. The first one is Retro Demonology by Jana Oliver. This is a short story prequel to, I think the series might be called Demonology or Demon Trappers. Either way, it's a series that I've been interested in reading, and I had this prequel that I bought a really long time ago on Kindle, so I decided to check it out. I feel like this is a very like firm 3-star. There wasn't anything in it that I didn't like. There wasn't anything in it that I loved. So it was just like a nice intro to what the series is going to be like, and I'm definitely interested in checking out the rest of the books. My next 3-star is another one that is a very solid 3, and that is A Silent Voice by, which I'm going to attempt to say their name, but I feel like I'm definitely mispronouncing it, so I apologize for that. I think it's pronounced Yoshitoki Oima. So this was one that one of you guys suggested me to pick up after I read Orange. I did enjoy this book. I feel like since I was comparing it to Orange that it fell in a very like solid 3-star, but this book was really good and I do recommend picking it up. I would say if you haven't picked up Orange yet, to read this and then read Orange because I think Orange is definitely the superior book, but I really enjoyed this and I'm definitely interested in reading the next one. And the last 3-star is The June Boys by Court Stevens. This was my November book club book. I definitely didn't expect to pick a 3-star book, and I will say that book club felt pretty strongly as well that this was like a 3-star or under for them. So this book, I was expecting it to be pretty dark. It's about a serial kidnapper who takes 3 boys every June and keeps them for a year. The boys show up a year later, not knowing who took them. They've just been kept in like a basement, but then one of the boys is found dead. So I will say that the whodunit aspect of this book was really good and really well done. Our main character suspects her father. It was a wild ride. I think that I accused every single character in this book except for the one who actually did it. So that was fun. I think that's the only thing that I enjoyed about this book. Otherwise, it felt very flat. I didn't have any kind of connection to any of the characters, and I felt like at times it was a bit preachy. Now moving on to our lonely 4-star, and that is The Lonely Dead by April Henry. This was my book club's bonus book, and I enjoyed this one so much more than The June Boys. This book is about a girl who is able to see and speak with the dead, including dead pets, which was very interesting. However, from a young age, she was diagnosed schizophrenic and has been put on medicine. And now that she's a teen, she decides to go off of her meds just to see what it's like. And she ends up finding out that her ex-best friend was murdered and tries to help solve her case while also not letting anyone know that she's off her meds. I found this book to be so interesting. I really love the questions that it brought up about mental health and mental illness. And I just really loved the story. It is such a great YA mystery thriller. And I loved the super dramatic ending that we have. I also think it's really cool that this is a standalone when it could have very easily been a series. And I have found out that April Henry has so many more books and they're all YA mystery thrillers. So I'm very excited to read more by her. And now moving on to the 5 stars. The first one I'm going to talk about is one that I feel like I talked about in my October wrap-up, but I honestly don't remember, so we're going to talk about it now, and that is books 1 through 3 of the Mortician's Daughter series by C.C. Hunter. I read all 3 of these books in the month of November. Number 1, I think I may have finished on November 1st, so it might have been in my October wrap-up, but the other 2 were for sure read in November. I gave all 3 of these books 5 stars, and I picked them up on a freaking whim. I saw that the first one was available on Hoopla. I picked it up just because it's a book that's been on my TBR basically since it came out, and decided, why not? Let's try it. And then binged the entire series. These books were so good, and I had such a fun time. I will say that if you're reading them very critically and looking for things, they're not perfect books, but they were so fun and so enjoyable, and I had to give them 5 stars because I could not stop listening to them. The next one is After the Fire by Will Hill. This is a book about a girl who escapes a cult after a fire breaks out and their camp undergoes a siege by the US government. It was super interesting. I've never read a book about a cult before, and this was so freaking good. I'm definitely interested in reading more books about cults, so if you have any recommendations, please leave them down below. But what was really interesting about this book is that it's told in dual timelines. So the chapters alternate between before the fire and after the fire, and we have this character who's kind of unreliable, and we really don't know what her part was in everything. And you have to slowly find out who she is and what she's done and what her future is going to be like. And it was so good. Next is Stay With Me by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is part of her Be With Me series, I believe. Each of the books follows a different set of characters and can be read in any order or as standalones. I am obsessed with this series. It is so freaking good. I picked this book up because I was in a reading slump and was kind of feeling guilty about it and needed to pick up something that I was going to love, so I picked this up and of course loved it. If you haven't checked out this series, I highly recommend it. Next is Frat House Confessions Ridge by Bethany Lopez. The way that I heard about this book is very random. The author messaged me and thousands of other people on Goodreads inviting us to an event, which was the release of this book, and I think that it was available for free, or maybe 99 cents or something. I think it might have been for free. So I grabbed it because it sounded really good, and I loved this book so much. This is another new adult romance, and I just had such a great time with it. I'm really, really excited to read more of the books in the series. This series works the same as the Be With Me series, where each of the books can be read separately. They each follow different characters, and I'm just very excited about it. I'm pretty sure that I now own the second book, and then I think the third and fourth books are still coming out. And there is a spin-off series where I want to say that all 3 books are already available, but it follows Ridge's stepsisters. And yeah, I'm just so happy that I got this like random invite on Goodreads because I love this book. And my last 5-star and my favorite read of the month was The Brightest Night by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Is anybody surprised? I wouldn't say that I'm surprised, but I'm definitely relieved that it ended up being a 5-star read. I started this book either in October or sooner and put it down for a while because it just was hitting a little too close to home. This series follows an alien race of people who the government is tracking down and trying to not only run tests on, but also eliminate them. And with everything that's been going on in America, it just felt like it was a little too personal, and I wanted to be a little bit more far removed before I kept reading. Even thinking about picking up the book was giving me anxiety, and I just decided it was better if I put it down. And I decided to read another chapter in November just to see if I was ready or not, since the election was over and hopefully a brighter future was in our paths. And got sucked back into the book. So I finished it, absolutely loved it. I don't regret putting it off or setting it down because I needed to prioritize my own mental health over reading a book that I would end up loving. And I think that that's important to kind of mention in this video, that sometimes we prioritize other things over our own mental health. And I know that it's kind of like silly to be like, my mental health is more important than this book, but that is something to remind yourself that if you're not in the right headspace to read a book, don't force yourself to do it because you may end up doing more harm than good, and you might not even end up loving the book. Alright guys, those are all the books that I read in the month of November. Overall, I think I had a very successful month. I definitely had some books that I did not like, but I also had some that I really, really enjoyed. Definitely be sure to leave a comment down below telling me what you read this month. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, to please give it a thumbs up. Keep reading, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!